you, dear students. So glad to be back once again to take this class for class 9. The subject is geography, and today we do a new chapter, that is the landforms of the earth. So we have the landforms of the earth. That is the chapter that I'll be doing, dear students. I hope you all are doing some studies at home. Please make sure you study regularly, because it will take some while when we come back to our normal life. So till then, I would like to request all our wonderful students staying at home to please do some studies. Besides studying, I've always insisted you to read some good books. At least before this lockdown ends, at least read minimum one good book. And then please do help your parents at home with the different household chores and keep yourself occupied. Minimize your use with your mobiles and spend more time in reading books. So dear students, today we do a new chapter, and that is the landforms of the earth. So now, what are landforms? Landforms are the relief features that we see on the earth's surface. See, the relief features that we see on the earth's surface are termed as landform. It covers a broad category of different features like continents and oceans, mountains, plateaus and plains, also small minor land features like hills, valleys, deltas and so on comprise of the different land forms that we see on the surface of the earth. Now, these landforms are created on the earth's surface mainly because of the two important movements that take place either on the surface of the earth or inside the earth's surface. Now, these two movements are called the internal movements or the endogenic movement, and the other movement is called as the external movement or the exogenic movements. So now these two movements play a very vital role in shaping the different landforms that take place on the earth's surface. Now, whatever movements that take place inside the earth's surface, for instance, if you see volcanic eruptions, the earthquakes that take place inside the earth's surface, these are responsible for uplifting the land, creating different land features on the earth's surface. And then the other movement, that is the external movement, like the agents of gradation, like the wind, like the glaciers, like the rivers, like the rainfall, water. All these are also responsible for changing the land features on the earth's surface. Due to erosion and weathering, different land features are formed. That is because of the external forces. So because of the internal movement and the external movement, the earth's surface goes on undergoing changes. It continuously undergoes changes, but these changes are very, very gradual, which we don't see, which we don't notice. It's only after thousands and thousands of years we come to see the difference. So it's a very gradual change. Now, let us see the different landforms that are formed on the earth's surface. The first one which we do is the mountains. A mountain is the first land feature that we do right now. And what are mountains? See, a natural elevation of the earth's surface. Mountains are the natural elevation of the earth's surface, rising abruptly to a height of around 900 meters above the sea level is termed as a mountain. So, a natural elevation of the earth's surface rising abruptly to a height of almost 900 meters above the sea level is termed as a mountain. See, the mountain has a very broad base. The base is very broad. It has very steep sides, rugged topography. See, pointed peaks. That is the characteristics. That is the features of the mountain. Very pointed peaks, rugged topography, steep slopes, broad base. These are the different features of a mountain. Now, there are basically three mountain building periods that have taken place in our history. The first one is the Caledonian period, mountain building period. The The first one is the Caledonian period, that was around 320 million years ago. And then the second one which we have is the Erosional period, that took place around 240 million years ago. And then we have the third one, that is the recent one, Alpine mountain building period, that is around 30 to 50 million years ago. So these are the different mountain building period that took place in our history. Now let us see the different types of mountains that we have. I've told you what is a mountain. Now the different types of mountains that we have is one, a fold mountain. Excuse me please. A fold mountain. The second one we have is a block mountain. The third one we have is a volcanic mountain. And the fourth one we have is a residual mountain. Now what is a fold mountain? A fold mountain is a mountain which is mainly formed due to compression. When pressure is applied from both the sides, the central portion rises up. That is called as a fold mountain. See? Fold mountains are the mountains which are formed because of compression. For example, if I take this textbook, and if I apply pressure from both the sides, compression, I'm applying pressure from both the sides. So as I apply pressure from both the sides, the central part starts to rise up. So this is how the fold mountains are formed. Inside the Earth's surface, the tectonic plates are pushed. And when the tectonic plates are pushed, the central portion starts to rise up, resulting to the formation of a fold mountain. Now there are different types of fold mountain. One is a young fold mountain and the other one is an old fold mountain. A young fold mountain is a mountain which has been formed recently. See, it was formed in the Alpine period, see, 330 to 50 million years ago. That is the recent mountain building period. And these mountains are the young fold mountains which are formed during that period. Now, the characteristics of the young fold mountains are that it has very steep slopes and deep valleys, sharp pointed snow-covered peaks, rugged topography, complex faulting and folding, presence of volcanoes. Examples of the young fold mountains are Himalayas, the Alps and the Andes are the examples of the young fold mountain. Now if you see the old fold mountain, the characteristics of the old fold mountains, the mountains which are formed much more longer, earlier than the young fold mountains. They were formed in the Caledonian period and the Erosional period, almost 300 to 240 million years ago. What is the characteristics of this old fold mountain? They have round tops and sculptured domes, gentle slopes, see, highly eroded features, lower than the young fold mountains. They are much more lower than the young fold mountains. They have been eroded more. Evidence of volcanoes are also seen in these old fold mountains, and the examples are the Appalachians, the Urals and the Aravallis. So these are the examples of the young fold mountain. So I told you, the young fold mountains are mainly taking place because of the compression, pressure applied from both the sides of the tectonic plates, whereby the central part starts to rise up, resulting to the formation of fold mountains. Now the second one we have is a block mountain. Now a block mountain mainly forms because of the tensional force. Tensional force means when you apply pressure in the opposite direction. Compression means when you apply opposite to the same towards the center. But in the case of the block mountains, in the block mountains what happens is, block mountains are formed because of the tensional force when the pressure is applied in the opposite direction, whereby the central part, the tectonic plates crack, creating force. And when these faults are created, the lands or the earths in between slide down or rise up, resulting to the formation of what is called as a block mountain. Simple example here. See, I take this paper. Suppose this is a flat land. It's a flat piece of land. Now when I apply pressure in the opposite direction, I pull in my right side and I pull in left side. That is called as faulting. So when faulting takes place, what happens? Then the earth starts to crack. And when the earth cracks, slowly by slowly, what happens? See, it moves apart. And then how it is formed? See, here you can see the lands can either move down or either move up. So see, this is called as a block mountain. See here, block mountain. You can see here, this portion which has risen up. This is called as a block mountain. See this one, block mountain. And the center is called as a rift valley because it has gone down. So block mountains are formed when the tensional force takes place. And when there are two horizontal when there are two tensional cracks on the tectonic plates, when there are two cracks on the tectonic plates, what happens is the earth moves apart, and when the earth moves apart, either they can slip down, or if they are pushed together towards each other, they can rise up, resulting to the formation of block mountains or rift valleys. See, this is how it is. See, if they are pushed towards each other, this block mountain is formed, this portion. If they are pushed towards each other, this block mountain is formed. And if they are pulled away from each other, this rift valley is formed. See? So this is how a block mountain is formed, because of the faulting tensional force that is applied, a pressure that is applied outwards, or in the case of some cases also inwards, whereby the land moves up and forms a block mountain. Then we have the third one here, that is a volcanic mountain. Now, what is a volcanic mountain? A volcanic mountain is a mountain which is formed because of the volcanic eruption. Now, suppose the volcanic eruption goes on taking place for thousands and thousands of years. What happens? The lava comes out. And as the lava comes out, what happens? The lava, the dust, see? Then the ashes, all of these accumulate at the vent of the volcano, at the mouth of the volcano. And when these accumulate at the mouth of the volcano, in course of thousands of years, what happens? We have the formation of what is called as a volcanic mountain taking place. Let's see an example here. This is the formation of a block mountain. See? You can see how it is formed there. See here? See? Because of tensional force, what happens? The central part starts to move down. This is a rift valley. This is a rift valley, whereas this on top is a block mountain. That is because of the tensional force. See, they move down, forming a rift valley or a block mountain. Then we have the next one, the volcanic mountains here. See how this is formed? Just see. The volcanic eruption takes place. You can see it rising, the volcanic lava is coming up, and as the lava goes on coming out, what happens? We have the lava coming out, the ashes will come out, cinders, see, and slowly by slowly what happens? They cool down, they form into a small hill. Again, some more volcanic eruption takes place, and this goes on and on and on, and ultimately what happens? It becomes a huge mountain, which is called as a volcanic mountain. So this is how a volcanic mountain takes place. You can see the example here. And then the third one which I told you is the residual mountain. Residual mountain. Now how are residual mountains formed? Residual mountains are formed basically because of the sediments. See, because of the erosion that takes place. Because of the erosion that takes place because of the glaciers. Okay, agents of gradation like the wind, water, waves and ice. Because of the erosion taking place, what happens? When the mountains are created, it results to the formation of what is called as a residual mountain. Now, in this case, what is there? See, when the erosion takes place, what happens? The softer rocks will all get eroded. The softer mountains, the rocks will be eroded. And whatever remains after the erosion, the land features that remain after the land has been eroded, forms into a mountain which is called as a residual mountain. That is when the rain falls down, or when the glaciers move down, or when the water is coming down, what happens? Erosion takes place. After erosion, whatever land features are left behind, which cannot be eroded, forms into what is called as a residual mountain. So that is how we have the first one, that is mountains. Now let's go to the next one, page number 2, that is the plateaus. What are the plateaus? Now before we go to the plateaus, you can see even the examples of the Himalayas. The Himalayas was also at one point of time the sea. The Himalayas at one point of time were the sea. They were formed from the sea called as the Tethys Sea. In ancient times there was a sea called as the Tethys Sea. And this Tethys Sea was surrounded by two major land masses, the Angara lands and the Gondwana lands. And because of the erosion from these two lands which went into the Tethys Sea continuously for thousands and thousands of years, the sediments started to accumulate in this sea. And because of the compressional force that took place inside the Earth's surface. See, the Himalayas is an example of a fold mountain. The Himalayas is an example of a fold mountain, young fold mountain. So when the sediments of the Angara lands and the Gondwana lands started to accumulate in the Tethys Sea, and because of the compressional force, and more importantly, the Indian plate sliding under the Eurasian plate, the landforms were pushed up, resulting to the formation of these chains of mountain called as the Himalayas. So that is how the Himalayas were formed. These Himalayas at one point of time were at the base of the Tethys Sea. Most of the rocks that are found there are sedimentary rocks. But because of the compression that took place in the tectonic plates, resulted to the formation of this fold mountain, which is called as the Himalayas. Now we go to the next one, that is plateaus. What are plateaus? See, in very simple terms, plateaus are flat lands with steep sides. They are also called as tablelands. See, tablelands. They are also called as tablelands. Now, types of plateau, we have the diastrophic plateau. Diastrophic plateau. Diastrophism denotes the process whereby the process of deforming the Earth's surface. Diastrophism denotes the process whereby the Earth's surface is deformed. Changes takes place on the Earth's surface, whereby different land features are formed. That is called as diastrophic plateaus. Diastrophic plateaus. Now let us see the different types of plateaus. The first one we have is the tectonic plateau. What is a tectonic plateau? A tectonic plateau is a plateau which is formed because of the internal movement, tectonic pressure. When the tectonic pressure is applied and the lands start to rise up, it results to the formation of a tectonic plateau. Next one is intermontane plateau. Intermontane plateau is basically also a plateau which is formed because of the upliftment of the tectonic plates. Now these intermontane plateaus are the plateaus which are found between the mountains. That's why they call it intermontane plateaus. A plateau which is surrounded by mountains on two sides or three sides is called as an intermontane plateau. Now this intermontane plateau is formed because of the upliftment of the tectonic plates, whereby intermontane plateaus are created. Next one we have is the volcanic plateaus. Now these volcanic plateaus are also the plateaus which are formed because of the volcanic eruption that has taken place for thousands and thousands of years. When the volcanic eruption goes on taking place for thousands and thousands of years, the ash, the cinders, the dust, whatever materials are there, lava starts to all accumulate on the land, and when this goes on and on, it forms into a plateau, whereby it forms into a raised land, which is termed as a plateau, which is called as a volcanic plateau. Now a dissected plateau. What is a dissected plateau? Dissected means to cut. See, in the past, when students were in class 11 and 12, they had to undergo a biological practical, where they had this practical class where they had to dissect the animals. Now the animal rights activists have banned this. But many years ago, when we were students, when we were studying at that time, we had this practical class for the bio students, class 11 and 12, especially the class 12 students. Even for biology also, even for the level students also, they had this dissection. For the lower classes, they had the smaller dissections. For the bigger class, they had major dissections. They had to dissect a cockroach. They had to dissect a rat. Cut the rat and see the internal parts. See, that is called as dissection. That was done in the past. Practical class for the bio students. But now, because of the concern of the animals, we need to take care of them as well. See, they are also living beings. We have to have the compassion feeling towards each one of us. We need to be very good, have a compassion feeling, love towards each other, and minimize harming others. That's very, very important. And also, please make sure, dear students, please, when you stay at home, pray in the morning, pray in the evening. It's very important. You have to pray. This is the time. At your age, you have to pray. It's very important. When you pray, you become spiritually enlightened, and whereby many positive energy will flow into you, and you will also avoid falling into the wrong directions and the wrong path as well. So, very important, dear students. So, as I was saying, dissected plateau. Now, this dissected plateau is a plateau which is formed when the plateaus are cut by the rivers. When the water erodes the land, or the wind erodes the land, forming deep drains, whereby dissecting the area. So a dissected plateau is a plateau which is formed when the lands are eroded by the rivers and wind, whereby forming steep sides. That is called as dissected plateau. Then continental plateau. Continental plateaus are again those plateaus which are formed because of the internal force. When the continents are pushed up. When the continents are pushed up, it results in the formation of a continental plateau. Okay, and then we have the last one that is here. That is the Piedmont Plateau. What is a Piedmont Plateau? A Piedmont Plateau is a plateau which is formed because of erosion. Piedmont Plateau is basically a plateau which is formed at the foothills of the mountain. At the foothills of the mountain. A Piedmont Plateau. See, for instance, I'll just show you an example here. This is a mountain here. See? We could have a sea here as well. Water body. So this is a plateau, Piedmont Plateau. A Piedmont Plateau is a plateau which is formed at the foot of the mountains, foothills of the mountain. Now this is mainly formed because of erosion. From the mountains continuously, what happens? Erosion takes place. And this erosion goes on continuously accumulating on the land, whereby forming a plateau at the foot of the mountain which is called as a Piedmont Plateau. Okay, so now let's go to the next one. Here we have a structural plane. Now we come to the plains. Now what are plains? What are plains? Plains are basically a level or a slow undulating land, a land which is gently rolling and which doesn't attain a height of more than 150 meters above the sea level is called as a plain. A gentle rolling land which has a height of not more than 150 meters above the sea level is called as a plain. Now there are different types of plain. For instance, we have the structural plain. Then we have the erosional plane, and then we have the depositional plane. Depositional plane. When they are depositing, then we form a depositional plane. So let's see the first one. What is a structural plane? A structural plane is a plane which is formed because of the upliftment of the continental shelf due to the internal force. A structural plane is formed because of the upliftment of the continent due to the internal force, whereby a flat land is created called as a structural plane. That means a structural plane is formed when the continents are lifted up because of the internal force, tectonic pressure. What happens? The lands are pushed up, the continents are pushed up, forming a structural plane. Then we have the next one, that is erosional plane. What is an erosional plane? An erosional plane is a plane which is formed because of erosion. See, the word itself tells you. Erosional plane, a plane which is formed because of erosion. See, the erosion takes place on the mountains, the hills. See, the plateaus. Erosion takes place because of rain, because of glaciers, because of the wind. See, when erosion takes place and when a flat land is created, it is called as an erosional plane. Okay, so let's see the examples of the erosional plane. The first one is a penny plane. Now, what is a penny plane? A penny plane is basically a plane which is formed because of the erosion on the mountains or hills by the agents of gradation. And what are the agents of gradation? Wind, water, waves and ice. But in case of mountains, what happens? Wind, water or ice takes place. So when the mountains and hills are eroded either because of wind, water or glaciers, ice, and creates into a flat land, it is called as a penny plane. See? Next one is a karst plane. What is a karst plane? A karst plane, what is basically a karst plane? A karst plane is basically formed in the limestone region because of the underground water which dissolves the materials. When the underground water dissolves the materials and turns it into a flat land, undulating plane, it is called as a karst plane. That means this is mainly found in the limestone region. Where the underground water dissolves these materials and forms it into an undulating plane, it is called as a karst plane. Then if you turn to the back, we have the glaciated plane. See, glaciated plane. A glaciated planes are basically formed because of the erosion of the glaciers. When the glaciers move down, all the sediments, stones, mud is dragged down, and when this process continues for a long time, for thousands of years, the land turns out to be a flat or gentle rolling land, which is termed as a glaciated plane. A plane which is formed due to the glaciers ice. And then we have the desert plain. Desert plains are basically formed in the deserts. And this action mainly takes place because the winds are very strong in the deserts. See? The winds are stronger in the deserts because there is no obstruction. If you see in the mountains, the speed of the wind is comparatively less compared to the plains. Why is it so? Because in the hills we have so many obstructions. Mountains are there, hills are there, trees, forests are there, jungles are there, houses are there, because of which the speed of the wind is reduced. But in the case of plains, there are no mountains, there are no hills, because of which there is very less obstruction, and whereby the speed of the wind is stronger. So, in the case of desert plains, what happens is, when the wind blows in the deserts, see, the sands are all blown away to the edges of the deserts, whereby creating a plain area called as a desert plain. Okay. Now let's go to the next one. Let's see if we have the next one here. Then we come to the depositional plane. Depositional plane. Depositional plane. What are depositional plane? See, the last part of this lesson, depositional plane. To deposit. Depositional planes are those planes which are formed because of deposition. When the sediments are deposited, when the river takes down the sand, the mud, stones, pebbles, gravels, boulders, when they are taken down and when they are deposited on the different phases of the river, they form into a plain area which is called as a depositional plain. Okay? So let's see the examples now. Depositional plain. The first one is an alluvial plain. Alluvial plain. Alluvial plains are basically plains which are formed alluvial plain, basically alluvial plain. Okay, alluvial plain. Alluvial plain. Alluvial plain. The first one which we have is called the alluvial plain. Now this alluvial plain is basically a plain which is formed because of the erosion. Because of the erosion. See, because of the erosion. That is when the alluvial goes down and is deposited in the lower course of the river. It forms into a plain land called as an alluvial plain. The first example is a Piedmont alluvial plain. What is a Piedmont alluvial plain? I give an example last time also, or recently, sorry. I give an example where what is a Piedmont plain? See? Here, see? From the mountains, when the erosion takes place, they are taken down. And when these sediments, because they are too heavy for the rivers to carry any further. Because the rivers are unable to carry the sediments any further, they start to deposit in the low, just at the edge of the mountain, whereby forming into a plain area called as an Piedmont alluvial plain. A Piedmont alluvial plain is a plain which is formed at the foothill of a mountain. Because when the river flows down, the rivers are unable to take the boulders which are very heavy further down to the plain. So they start depositing it at the base of the mountains, whereby forming it into a flat land called as a Piedmont alluvial plain. Floodplain. The floodplain means slightly in the middle course of the river. In this course, floodplain, see? That is, as the river moves after depositing the heavy sediments, it forms an alluvial plain, and when the river still moves, there are still some bigger particles, sediments there. So when the river floods, whatever sediments are there, whatever particles are there, they start to be deposited on the banks of the river, forming what is called as a floodplain. So when the river floods, whatever sediments are there, whatever stones or pebbles, whatever are there, they all start to get deposited on the banks of the river, forming into what is called as a floodplain. Then we have the next one, that is the delta plain. Delta plains again are formed at the mouth of the river. So when the river goes on moving ahead, and when it starts to meet the ocean or the sea, at the mouth of the river, when the river can no longer transfer the sediments which it has brought from the mountains and starts depositing on the river banks or at the mouth of the river, it forms into a plain which is called as a delta plain. So delta plains are the plains which are formed at the mouth of the river because of the deposition of the sediments brought by the river, forming into a delta plain. Then we go to the next one, that is the glaciated plain. Glaciated plain. Glaciated plains again. Glaciated deposits. Now the deposits which are brought down by the glaciers are called as the glaciated deposits. Okay, and then we have the next one, that is the lacustrine plain. Lacustrine plains are basically the plains which are formed by filling the sediments in the lake beds. That means when the lakes are filled with the sediments brought down from the mountains or hills, and when they are deposited there and a plain is formed, area is formed, it is called as a lacustrine plain. A lacustrine plain is a plain which is formed when the sediments are deposited in the shallow lakes, whereby turning it into a flat land called a lacustrine plain. Leos plain is basically formed in the deserts. See, it's mainly formed in the deserts because of the wind. When the wind blows, what happens is the winds take all the sediments, take away all the sediments, and these sediments, mainly comprising of particles of lime, which are yellow in color, are transferred to the edges of the deserts and forming into a plain area called as a Leos plain. And then we have the last one, that is the coastal plain. Coastal plains are formed near the coastal areas, along the sea shores, along the sea beaches. In those areas, when the sea moves, when the waves come towards the land, these waves bring sediments and they start depositing the sediments on the sea beaches, whereby forming into a flat land called as a coastal plain. So this is how we have the depositional plains being formed. So I guess, students, this is more or less the end of this class here. Please listen to this class a couple of times, look into this lesson a couple of times, and then read your books, and then please try to solve the questions that are there at the back. It's very important that you solve the questions, and I told you, especially the ones which are having the reasoning questions. Why? Define the following. Some of the important questions. Attend to all the questions, but make sure you do the questions which are related with, give reasons for, then define the following, distinguish between, and so on. Okay, so that questions are on page number 57. So please do it. Study nicely, take care of yourselves, and be healthy. And please listen to your parents. Thank you so much. Good day.